Hello everyone, and welcome to Straight Chilling. Each week we watch and review a horror film for your entertainment. You can send all questions and comments to straightchillingpodcast@gmail.com, and don't forget to keep chilling.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing. 5 cold feelings on the mind, got you reeling. 5-star ratings from the floor to the ceiling. If you get your 1 star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ, all the 1s and 2s. By the name Elsevier, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all in 2. And prepare to hear the legend of the Straight Chillin' crew.
What up, nerds? Welcome to another double-cheeked episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name's Bob. I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode number 273, recorded Sunday, June 28th, 2020. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the winner of the June poll pick. The people voted, and what they chose is something truly horrific. It's Eraserhead from 1977. Before we get into the review, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from North Kakalaki, or Carolina, or California, or Illinois, or Canada, Mexico, New Mexico.
Clearly, I live in your head.
Where you at, dog? Where you at? You're everywhere.
Northern sector of California.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's good. I'm glad you're there, holding it down for the Straight Chilling crew.
I'm still kind of riding high. I just came out of a grocery shopping situation that, well, is pretty identical to that Target that got looted. Is kind of the feeling I had about it.
So everything was free?
Well, no, nothing was free, but everything was chaotic. And I am losing my shit still. So, Hey, let's roll. Let's talk about the slowest movie in America.
Let's do it.
Eraserhead.
Last but not least, calling in from Southern Korea, we got our boy Soju. What's up, man?
What up? It's your boy Sniatsujos. We gotta think outside the box today, boys.
Is that backwards?
Randy knows.
Did that gum you like come back into style?
Oh.
Dude, that's a little Soju stains backwards. I know how Lynch likes to talk backwards sometimes.
Oh, yeah. He talks backwards all the time.
Gotta think outside the box with this guy.
My boy Dave, always speaking backwards.
I'm opening up my mind, you know? I'm really getting into it, man.
Are you eating shrooms and like surfing now? What are you?
Sniats Ujos. Here we go.
Nice. You know what? That's pretty good. It's solid. I'll give credit where credit's due. I'm proud of you, man.
Thanks, Bob.
Good work.
Soju, you're all right.
You know what? We'll let you keep the job for now. Don't fuck up, though.
Soju comes through, Bob. Don't ever say Soju doesn't come through.
On occasion, he will. Let's tackle some housekeeping real quick before we get into the main event. This is your final reminder. The July poll pick is posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're talking about this July. The theme for July is aquatic horror. The movies you can vote between are Anaconda, Dagon, and Jaws.
Bob, how are those numbers looking?
Anaconda's winning by a couple votes, man. Jaws is right there just behind, and Dagon's way on back.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Not Jaws.
I'm excited to talk about Anaconda. Looks like that's going to win. You got a couple days left.
Anaconda.
We'll see, Bob. Don't you project over here.
Whatever. The people want.
The projection is in.
That's right. Yeah, a couple days left to vote. Get them in for sure. I posted a new bonus episode on our Patreon website. It is exclusive to the $10 level. I talked about a movie called Swallow, which was a new release.
Swaller.
Little movie called Swaller. It's on VOD everywhere. It is pretty horrific, pretty messed up, also pretty beautiful. Solid movie. Check that out if you are interested. Juice, what do you got? You got any news?
Dude, I got all kinds of news up in this. So speaking of bonus episodes, you are also on the $10 level, which that's the hashtag Horror With Us level, right? Is that
Truth.
correct?
Hard with us.
All right. So if you are, in fact, hashtag hard with us, you will be getting another mini episode from Shiboy Soju, finally kicking one out. And it was for the first season of Kingdom. And I will be following that up very soon with season 2 of Kingdom. That's the Korean zombie horror show that came out. Season 1's from last year. Season 2 came out earlier this year. So that'll be coming out. I have a new video game review that is up on our YouTube right now, going through the BioShock trilogy. And so this month it was BioShock Deuce. It is up on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Straight Chilling Podcast. I made a playlist for all of the video game reviews together. I used to separate them out by game, but now I just put all the reviews together. We're up to 13 horror video game reviews, so that's some extra content in case you're interested in some horror video games. And also, I was lucky enough to be a guest on the Horrorphoria podcast this weekend, so if you want a little extra soju in your life, and who doesn't, of course, you can check out that. We talked about Parasites, and yeah, that just came out on Friday. Is that all of my housekeeping? I believe so. I think that's all I got.
Nice.
Oh,
Got plenty of bonus content out there for you. I think, on the $10 level, we're up to like 18 mini casts, and we got a couple more coming down the line here shortly. So there's plenty of stuff up there for you guys. Also, just wanted to give a big thanks to everybody that signed up for our You Pick the Flick tier that opened up last Sunday. We hadn't actually recorded the show since that opened up. They sold out immediately, and we got some solid picks. I'm excited to get into them. We're going to start getting into them in a couple weeks.
Good.
So yeah, good.
Man, those things go fast. G baby, he missed it again. I've been trying.
Oh no, he did.
I've been trying to set him up.
Guys,
that West Coast, it's tough.
No matter how slow you think you are, you'll always beat G baby to the punch. Is what I'm learning.
Next,
where's G baby? He was in the beginning, and he thought it was going to be smooth sailing, but
nope.
If you want to console our friend G Baby, come onto our Slack. Give us a ring, and we'll put you in our Slack channel.
A ringy dang, that's right. Yeah, I'll push it back next quarter to like 3 p.m. just to give the people on the West Coast a little extra time to wake up, get the sleep out of their eyes and log in.
Fucking East Coast privilege, god damn.
Right. I think that's all the housekeeping we got. Let's go ahead and jump into the main event. We're talking about Eraserhead, and we're kicking it off with the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
All right.
You've got this box, right, Bob? You got the steel book?
No, I have not purchased
the Crit Collection.
I have not purchased this. Yeah, it's a really nice Criterion release of this out there, but I don't own it because I'm not a fan of this movie. Anyway, Eraserhead from 1977, written and directed by David Lynch, starring Jack Nance, Charlotte Stewart, Alan Joseph, a few other folks. Plot synopsis is as follows. Henry Spencer.
Skip to the end.
Henry Spencer. I wish I could, Randy. I wish I could. Tries to survive his industrial environment, his angry girlfriend, and the unbearable screams of his newly born mutant child. All right. Gentlemen, had you seen this before, and would you recommend people check it out? Randy, kick us off.
Yeah, I've seen this, I think, twice before. And as far as recommendations go, this is a tough one because this movie is definitely not going to stroke everybody's pickle. This one's gonna hit people in really weird and unexpected places that they might not enjoy, as is evident by the amount of sodium Rob is exuding at all times. So I would say that if you are looking for a movie that's sort of challenging, certainly unique, like something that you're not going to have seen before, this is probably a good pick for you. Lots of slow burn dread, lots of lots of really striking visuals. I would say that if you are interested in something like Tetsuo or Hasu or A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, or any number of movies that have sort of slow builds and are horror adjacent rather than very directly in the classic horror vein, I think this would hit you okay, but it really isn't something for all occasions by any means.
It's not something for most occasions, I think. Juice.
Oh, wow. Bob, how's that salted beef of yours?
I am a human pickle tonight. Let me tell you. Juice, what do you think?
I had never seen this movie before, and actually I was a big advocate for including it on that pick list because I hadn't seen it fully. I've seen like images and clips from this, but I've never watched it from beginning to end. And it's only an hour and a half, and it's not an easy watch, but having never seen it before, I found it super interesting as far as what I feel like I've experienced through my life that was influenced from this movie. Like, I feel like it's very historically influential in film and in like media and stuff like that. And I was kind of surprised at some of the things that just kept like flashing into my head as I was watching this, like, oh, that was probably inspired by this in some kind of ways. So I think it does certainly holds the high regard, like influence wise. And it's an interesting look at like anxiety put to film. Is, you know, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in our like in-depth review, but yeah, I think that's actually done really well. So it's a weird recommend, but I do think it's worth a watch, and it doesn't take that long to get through, and but it's not easy to watch for sure.
True that. I'd seen this once.
Bob, you love this film. Why are you giving it a 5-star?
Rob,
today?
why did you insist that this film be stacked and won on the back of voter fraud?
I don't even need to talk on this show. I should just let you guys talk for me, and then that's fine.
We know your opinions.
You do.
We know
Better
them.
than I do. You're right.
Definitely.
I'd seen this movie once
Rob,
before.
go ahead. What'd you think?
You can talk now.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. No, this movie is definitely not for me. Famously not for me. You done? You got out of your system?
Oh, I'm waiting on you, bro.
Oh, okay. Yeah, totally. I think I just, in general, I struggle with David Lynch movies in general. I prefer something with like a more straightforward narrative. I think this movie definitely has a narrative, but it's, you know, shrouded in a lot of very high, like artsy fartsy types of bullshit. I don't know. You can kind of
interesting European style.
You can read into this movie, and it's got some interesting imagery, but I think it kind of gets in its own way a little bit. It definitely induces a ton of anxiety. It does that incredibly well, like Justin was saying. This movie is not fun to watch for me at all. As soon as it starts, I cannot wait for it to be over. I'm like on edge the whole time.
I love being incontinent.
Right. And I get that that's the point, but it is not fucking enjoyable for me. I would recommend it to people if you're just like a Lynch completist, or if you're like way into art house movies.
This is like the Lynch movie to watch by most people's metric. It's interesting that to you, it's like if you need one more bit of Lynch, I guess you use his seminal like breakout film.
Yeah, this is for me like Blue Velvet is the one that I would reach to first.
Yeah, me too. But I think there's a lot of squabbling amongst fans and non-fans alike about which is most in line with his work.
Yeah,
or most indicative, I guess.
This movie is difficult to get through, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna talk about this whole thing. That's really the only people I'd recommend this to. It's a light recommend from me for sure.
A real light recommend.
Real light. Let's go ahead and drop that spoiler warning and get into the rest of the movie. Here we go.
Spoiler warning.
So, this movie is about what it'd be like to have a baby Yoshi, I think.
Yes,
that's where I landed.
This is like a PSA against veal. I think that's how I read. This movie.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I've never seen a fetal cow before, so I guess I just don't know. I can't identify on sight, but apparently that's what this thing is evocative of to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
The baby.
Yeah.
The mutant baby.
The mutant.
Yeah. So I have a plot synopsis typed up. Most of this.
You typed it up and everything?
I did. I can get through it quickly. I promise.
Okay.
Skip to the end.
This movie
This should be interesting. I want to hear Rob's
Yeah.
perception.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of
this.
editorializing in here, I feel like.
There's
And then this bullshit happened.
And then for no fucking reason.
this dumbass person over here does this stupid fucking thing. No,
All
so
right,
like
Bob, let's see what you
Let's
got.
hear it.
this movie is basically a nightmare. It deals in like dream logic. So pretty much everything I'm about to say is going to make very little sense. But here we go.
They're just the things that happen on screen.
Right,
Here we
exactly.
go.
All right, so the movie starts off with like some sort of dreamy sequence comprised of images that are overlaid one another. We got our main character, Henry. We've got this like worm fetus type thing. There's this large round, what looks like a planet kind of object that we're zooming into. And we see a man sitting in a window and he's covered in what appears to be mold to me. I'm not really sure what it is. He's pulling on these big levers and then like the fetus thing kind of swims away and falls into this giant puddle. And then we sort of come out of that sequence and we see our main character, Henry, and he's like entering his apartment complex. And he's told by his neighbor who lives across the way from him that he missed a phone call from Mary, who invited him over to have dinner with her and her parents. Henry goes to dinner with Mary, and he meets her parents, and it's like a very bizarre situation. They have very awkward small talk. These tiny,
It is very bizarre indeed.
they eat these tiny bleeding chickens. Mary's mother then like interrogates Henry as to whether or not they had intercourse, and she gets it out of him that they did. And apparently Mary gave birth to a child who was premature, and it's like a mutant child, and it's at the hospital, and she tells
They
him
aren't even sure it's a child.
they're not even
she
sure it's a
says.
child. Yeah.
Not a good start.
Henry and Mary pick the baby up from the hospital, and they go back to Henry's apartment, and they like try and raise it. The baby won't stop crying, and it sort of drives Mary nuts, and she says she's leaving because she can't sleep. She's got to get sleep, so she goes back to her parents' house. The baby eventually falls ill, and it's covered in all these like little sores. Henry has this bizarre dream sequence where like this woman who lives in his radiator.
It is very bizarre indeed.
This radiator lady has like huge cheeks, and she's dancing on stage, and then she steps on these
Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon.
she's all double cheeked up, and she steps on these little spermy thingies, and they die, I guess. Henry's neighbor then comes over, and she asks if she can stay the night, and she's getting kind of like sultry with him. And then we get like another weird dreamy type sequence where like Henry and Mary are making out on his bed, but they're inside of a large puddle. And then we get more of the double cheeked up lady singing and dancing. And then Henry's head pops off and it rolls onto the stage, and a kid steals his head. He sells his head to this company who turns his head into like pencil erasers. It's very bizarre. Henry sees his neighbor with another man eventually. Henry then like returns to his apartment, and he cuts the cast off of his child, and we see its guts. Henry like stabs it in the guts, and then all this like blood and awful like foam stuff comes out of it. And then the baby's enlarged disembodied head starts floating around the room. And then we see an image of the planet thing from the beginning of the movie, and we like zoom into it, and there's a big hole in it after it breaks. We see like the moldy man pulling all these levers again, sparks are shooting out, going crazy. And then the final image, we see Henry hugging the big cheeked lady, and it's like a very stark, blown out white image. And that's pretty much the end of the movie.
And then ritual suicide.
Right. So obviously this movie's open for interpretation. I feel
No,
like
it's not.
the general plot, if you want to get into it, is about like this man who has a child, what appears to be accidentally, with his girlfriend, and then she abandons him to raise the child on his own. And the like anxieties that are related to that, and also related to like, you know, meeting a significant other's parents, and like just having a job and living in a world that maybe you feel like you don't belong in. Like, I don't know, there's all sorts of different anxieties wrapped up into this movie that just like put me personally on edge the entire time I was watching it. I don't know, but it's all open for interpretation. Yep. How do you guys feel about this? Do you read it differently?
Well,
I be stroking.
Stroking.
I think it's
Whoa, you struck him, baby?
I think it's a like I was saying earlier, it's a pretty fucking unique movie. The thing that always like keeps me going through this is two things. Like because it is like you said, it's an extremely anxious movie. That's what it's clearly trying to induce is a level of anxiety in you. And the way it does that, first and foremost, is the thing that this movie is most praised for, and what David Lynch is consistently praised for in most of his movies, and it's the sound design. Because he weaponized the idea of like a low static humming into this like incredible like anxious feeling, and he does this in all of his movies, it seems like, at some point or another. And this movie, and especially, it's like trademarked to this movie. Just this low ambient humming with maybe some distant like clanging. It sounds like Tom Waits' like B-roll. And that you stack that on top of the second thing that keeps me like really engaged, which is the visuals. Now, every like I feel like there's a YouTube channel called Every Frame a Painting, and I feel like that phrase itself applies to this movie. You could freeze frame this movie, I think, at just about any point, and it would look like somebody's artwork. You can, to my mind, it looks like you can literally see the storyboards. Like you can trace it back mentally to its storyboard components. And considering that David Lynch started his movie production career as a painter, as a fine artist who wanted to just put his paintings in motion, that follows really well. And to me, it makes it really engrossing as somebody who's studied like fine arts from time to time. So, putting that out there.
Yeah, the sound design is very troubling. It's very off-putting. There's almost like no silence in this movie, or like very, very little silence. They're always like, but weirdly, it
always seems quiet.
Yeah, it's little dialogue, right? There's just a lot of like ambient noise that helps keep you on edge, and none of it sounds very natural. Like you said, there's a lot of like clanging and like metal sounds and like static.
Well, that has to do with the setting that they put it in, which I think was kind of smart, because it's not. Some flashbacks I kind of came back to is like Caligari, which we talked about. And in a very similar vein, this was a world that I didn't want to be in. It didn't feel, at any point, did it feel safe or nurturing or like comforting or welcoming. Even when he goes to his own home, there are things in his own home, even before he gets into the situation that he's in, that feel threatening. Everything just like, it's black and white, so everything feels looming. It's a world in the similar way I remember describing like Caligari, like, and how everything was just slightly off, like it wasn't quite normal, but not. It wasn't like I wasn't constantly thinking, is this a dream state? I was like, I understand that this is the world that he lives in, but it gives you that feeling of like his perspective, I guess, or the world's. It's very industrialized. It's very stark. It's
there's nothing
it's just
natural
not
about
warm. Yeah, it is. It's very manufactured, and I think that the sound design does a great job in supporting that. It's like, not only do you have to live in a world that looks like this, but this is what it sounds like. So not only does it not look comforting, it's like you can't even get a moment of clear silence is comfort that way. Like just being alone, it's like there's always this manufactured something infiltrating like your life, and that was really scary. This movie is like scary. It was scary to me.
It's dreadful. It's not.
It is
outwardly frightening, but it's dreadful, and it comes from the sound and comes from the visuals. And to your point, actually, like we were saying. So like that everything is manufactured. There's nothing, no naturalistic sounds except for the baby's wailing, which is a huge part of the movie. But there's a part that was brought to my attention by some YouTube video I watched at one point about this, because I went down a rabbit hole of just seeing what people thought of it. And there's this one spot where, there's several scenes of Jack Nance or Henry walking to and from places in this stark sort of like industrial area. And there's one spot in particular where he steps in a giant puddle and gets his foot all fucking muddy and wet or whatever, but there's no splash sound. And that it's not something that I noticed the first time I watched it. I had to have it like brought to my attention, but it's like, because the splash sound is a naturalistic sound. Yeah, and he's completely avoiding that. He made a conscious choice not to Foley that part.
Yeah.
I think that's fucking interesting.
The puddles are a theme throughout this movie, because like the very first scene we get where like the spermy thing falls in the puddle, again, there is no splash sound there. And then later on in the movie where there's like a bizarre dream sequence with Henry and Mary making out in the bed, but they're in a giant puddle and then they just slowly go underneath the water. It's a weird theme that I don't know exactly what it
maybe
means.
it's like a sexual correlation, because I took the opening sequence to be kind of like the representation of the conception of this child.
Yeah.
And so if that follows up with his then like I guess would be sexual affair, and that's like where it comes back into play, then it could make sense that it has like a sexual correlation.
Yeah, I don't know if like the. But I mean, in the one example I gave of him stepping in a puddle, it doesn't really track with that, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I would say that for the sex scene that we get, I just don't know like whether or not those things are directly connected so much as they are evocative of the feeling you're supposed to be feeling in that moment. And in that moment, it clearly is, to me, it indicates this is like sinking into a pleasurable state. You know what I mean? This is because this is Henry, who is the most anxious person in the world, according to this movie. And he's got all this fucked up shit happening that's some of it completely unexplainable. And this woman across the hall, suddenly wants to be with him. And they do. They go to town or whatever. And he's getting to like enjoy himself and distract himself from all of these issues that he's having. So all of those things melt away. You've heard that phrase. Like that's kind of the feeling it evokes for me, is like this idea of, okay, well, there's nothing quite like, being like physically involved with somebody to take the edge off, it's that idea. But, in other situations like stepping in a puddle, I just think it's like a brilliant small thing that if you're paying enough attention, you can say, okay, well, this just adds to the unrealistic nature of this movie. And you said like, we keep talking about like dream sequences versus not. I don't know that this movie isn't entirely a dream sequence. To me, it definitely feels like there's no like, the whole thing feels like a dream from the jump. It kind of feels like at the beginning it's really bizarre. Then it sort of grounds itself a little bit, and you think, okay, well, a regular narrative sort of building here, but then something bizarre happens, and it just sort of follows a train of thought, which is what dreams are. Is just your brain following a synaptic train of thought.
I wanted to add to the puddle thing real quick, like shortly after the intro where you see like the spermy thing laying in the puddle is where he steps in the puddle, which is an accident, and like that could just be correlated to like the accidental conception. It's
you're right. Actually,
another accident.
That's a good point.
But yeah, you could make an argument that this whole thing is a dream for sure. But within it seems like there is a clear narrative, and then things get like very wild on occasion. But yeah, it could just be a dream or a nightmare.
But like, okay, so to put a little edge on that, just to give a little perspective on that, since I don't know that we're going to bring this up in trivia or not, but it feels like it's important for critical eye, is that David Lynch has specifically gone on record as saying this is dream logic movie, and the entire thing is dream logic, whereas you might have a dream sequence in another movie. This one is entirely set as if it was him taking a dream he had and putting it onto film. And because dreams are dreams, it's completely up to whoever is watching or experiencing the feelings of the dream to determine what it is. So in his mind, there is no set definition for anything in this movie except what it is for him. And he expects the people watching to have a similar sort of approach to it. So I think that's important to note, because like, we're not going to find a right answer to anything because there isn't
a wrong one.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of like one of the
smart.
That's kind of one of the interesting things about this movie. Like, how many other movies take an approach like that? Like any movie you can take and, give and take whatever you want from it. But there's not a whole lot of movies that the whole point is for you to experience it, internalize it, and have your own take on it. Yeah. And it's perfectly sound no matter what. Like, I don't know.
It means everything and nothing.
Well, one thing I found fascinating about this movie, and it was something that kind of popped in my head pretty early on, because actually actually a majority of this movie, I know it's got the dream logic, but it does have a pretty clear idea. I felt like I didn't feel through the first 2/3 of this movie that I was lost. Now, once they go into the eraser factor, I was like, I don't really know what's going on here. But other than that, I was like, yeah, okay, this guy, he had an accidental kid. He doesn't really want it. He's trying to like do his best to take care of it. Like, you can kind of follow along with that. And one thing that I found kind of fascinating about it was oftentimes, we see movies. So I'm just going to take one like rom-coms, for example, because they're pretty popular movies. And when people watch those movies, it's an exaggeration of something that like we know, like an emotion, like love or falling in love or cutesy kind of things. And it's exaggerated. Like everybody who watches those movies knows like that's not really what it's like, but it has enough of what is real in there to like connect to. And because it's a warm type of thing, those types of movies are popular because they're easy to just kind of like fall into. But again, everybody kind of knows that that's not how it is. This is not real. This is emotion
stories don't
exaggerated
end in reality. Like,
so yeah, but the thing is I saw this movie as almost like the opposite side of a coin, if you will, where it's like, wow, not a whole lot of movies take that same kind of premise, but attach it to emotion that's negative. So as opposed to exaggerating like love type of things for profit, this is taking anxieties and fears and exaggerating them just enough to really sit unwell with you, but also to kind of drive that emotion home. And where I found that to be really prominent, or where I kind of attached that idea from initially, was when he goes to meet the parents. So like when he's got these social anxieties, for me personally, like that scene was really relatable. And yeah, even though there were some weird things like the dad being like, look at my knees, or like the food starts bleeding and stuff like that, still that initial, like the emotion that he was trying to relate in that, I related and I understood, and the exaggerations really just almost helped to bring it out of me even more, to where I was like, oh my God, it's kind of funny because when I was younger, I actually had a lot of these kind of family centered anxieties, like where you meet a family. And I was really, this movie actually kind of brought out a lot of things. Honestly, no, but seriously, I like gonna Soju's gonna be real for a little bit. I had some of these kind of very similar anxieties about specifically like meeting families and things like that. And I honestly, as I was watching this movie and kind of picking it apart and like going back to those emotions that I don't really experience much anymore, I was seriously thinking, I was like, I think that I was able to overcome a lot of these negative anxieties and emotions because of eventually spending so much time at Rob's house. So before I started hanging out with Rob, I would have these very similar types of anxieties that are portrayed in this movie, where you go meet these people and you're worried about kind of getting stuck in a very strange, foreign kind of situation. And I would think about those things when I was younger, but Rob's house became such a place where people would hang out, and it was a family that wasn't mine, but it was so welcoming, and his parents were such like relatable people and fun even when we were younger, that I realized now that a lot of my anxieties that I had before I met Rob and his family kind of melted away because of that. And that was a really cool thing for me to like realize as I'm watching this movie. And so I have this kind of positive, even though it's like a very like scary type of movie, I have this kind of positive realization, like, oh my God, I used to like experience these types of emotions, and I'm glad that I don't anymore because this is terrifying, like kind of like
the
that.
true Eraserhead is all of our close friends.
That's awesome, man. The good thing about my parents' house is like the chickens don't bleed, but they
don't bleed.
You will see my dad's knees because he wears the shortest shorts possible.
That is true. You will see that man's thighs like all the way up his thigh.
That's true. You will.
That is accurate. And you will also be
dad.
stuffed full of chicken because
Lots of chicken.
Lord knows Mama Bob likes to make a lot of cheeky.
Mama Bob.
Yeah, she likes to feed you. I agree though, man. Like,
I delight to the senses. Isn't it, my friend?
can you
that was
believe it
accidental,
comes
but
with
whatever.
a room? Yeah, the one part of this movie that I actually could relate to, and because of it, it became my favorite part of the movie, is the dinner sequence, because I think we can all relate to like going over and meeting like a significant others, like family or whatever, and feeling kind of like a fish out of water and like uneasy about the situation. And usually, whatever, it goes well, and you know, you're not eating this bleeding chicken. And also, like in that sequence, the mom sort of like makes the grandma toss the salad, and I just had to mention
It's a big salad.
It's a very big salad, and they don't eat it. They just get to the bleeding chickens.
I love that, and I love that they toss it together, like the Patrick Swayze ghost scene, like that style.
And then she
lights a cigarette for her, like it was like her like post-coital cigarette.
Was it good for you?
It's
Granny?
really weird.
It was good for me.
And speaking of coital, like there's in that scene with the mom interrogating Henry.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, that's very uncomfortable, and that's also relatable because like that's the nightmare. Like, are you fucking my daughter? Yeah. So you got that, and then but like the response to him being like, well, you know. Yeah, or whatever he says, is her being like, you know, you're in real trouble, and then making out with him,
right?
Or like
nibbling on his neck,
nibbling at his neck and shit, until the daughter comes in and goes, "Mom," like what the?
That is
fuck?
Very bizarre.
And also,
that would be a huge like source of comedy if it was in fucking Wedding Crashers, and in fact, it was.
It was, yeah. That's right. Call me Kitty Cat.
Also, even the follow-up to that of like the chick busting down Christ. So he's already been like really thrown off. And I actually feel like this sequence is really relatable too, because then the chick breaks down crying. They're like, oh, there's a baby. And then she's
you
like,
mind getting married, right?
Yeah, you don't mind getting married, dude, you Henry. And he's just like,
oh, no. God, yes, come with me.
So I actually, even though it's strange, I felt like, and then honestly, even the sequence following this where they have to bring the kid home and they have to share a bed, and it's really just uncomfortable because this is a relationship that you didn't technically really want to be in. I found that all like super relatable too, as far as like fears go. And another thing about like following up with this kid and why it's a mutant. I actually think it was a fine choice, and it made sense to me. Like, I didn't have a problem with it because as like human beings, we have this, it's like built into just like our genome that we like have to like take care of babies. Like they're cute and everything like that. And so even if you technically like don't want one, like if you see one on screen, like you like are programmed to take care of it or think, oh, it's cute, or like be positive towards it at least. So in this movie that's trying to relay fears of parenthood, it doesn't bother me at all that the child is as repulsive as possible, because it would be very, even if you took a normal baby child and like covered it in sores and stuff, you'd feel bad for it. Like you're like, oh no, this baby. So the only way to really like bring that out is to make it as hideous as possible. And they do that. Like, so hideous. That's fine with me. Yeah, it's hideous.
No, yeah, I don't think that like, I don't think that's even in question for me. That like you have to like, that is such a big part of the movie because like, yeah, I agree that this movie's central theme and the reason that we chose it for this theme of
Dastardly Ditties
is about being a dad, in this case, a really reluctant father to a creature that it repulses you, which there are people who've had that psychological issue. Those are things that happen. But in this case, in particular, it's a manifestation of his fear of what the child means for him, which is it's just a nuisance that keeps him in his apartment claustrophobically all the time, that drives away the other person who is involved with taking care of it. So he is forced to take care of it and care for it, even though he's repulsed by the sight of it. And that it eventually, after he has sex with the lady across the hall, even after that, he sees her going into her apartment with another man, and she looks over and he's like all upset about it. And she looks over at him and sees the baby's head on his body. And to me, what that was like indicative of is like, she can't see past his grotesque child. Yeah, all she sees is there's a father. And that's a fear that fathers have, is that like, I feel like, I mean, I don't know, but I feel like that's something that somebody might be afraid of, is like, I'm going to lose, my sexuality to being a father or being a parent. Yeah. My identity is being altered. Whereas if this child didn't exist, that would have been just fine. And maybe she would still be attracted to me. That attraction's gone now. And she's interested in another person. Who's
significantly older and skeezier and
has
things
a
like
burn
that
on his face or some shit.
Yeah, so I felt like that was important though too. It's like, man, because this woman is like, she's supposed to be kind of like beautiful and sultry. She's always wearing like dark kind of clothes and very seductive, kind of big hair or whatever. So it is like, man, this like opportunity kind of fell into his lap. She's like, one night she's like, oh, can I stay over? I got locked out of my apartment. And it's like, had it not been for this terrible child, he would have been like, scoring. But he's just score. But yeah, he's just stuck with this terrible, terrible child, ruining his life. Ooh.
Like I wrote a lot of notes because I wanted to make sure to like, I don't know. This movie, it feels like if you don't, you're going to miss a lot of like really hilarious shit. I wanted to bring up a few of them if that's okay. So starting with this, the mom sort of has a weird orgasm when he's trying to cut into the moving chicken. Did you guys notice that? And then has to leave the room screaming.
Yeah, she hauls ass. It's very bizarre.
I still don't even have a theory about what that was.
Mary has like a
little
stroke
lamb, right?
Or something. Like, so when he first gets over there, the mom asks what he does for a living, and he's like, oh, I'm on vacation. And then Mary starts like freaking the fuck out, and then he apologizes real quick, and he's like, oh, I'm like a printmaker, I work in a print shop or whatever he says. And then Mary sort of like chills out, and like the mom starts like combing her hair. It's like, it's a very bizarre sequence. And they also zoom
she
in
combs her hair to calm her. It's like a weird
I took that as like, you're going to visit somebody who, like, when you do that, you kind of assume like they're on your side, like they're kind of your shield, your buffer for their family. And that like that initial reaction was like, oh, she's not even reliable. Like I don't even like my shield is cracked. Like she can't even get through a conversation without.
She's like very fucked up and reasonably so considering what she gave birth to.
Yeah, they're pretty estranged, like Henry and Mary. They don't seem tight at all. It seems like quite a bit of time has passed, like potentially 9 months.
He had torn her picture in half, though he still had it in his drawer. It was like clearly indicating that they had either a falling out or that it wasn't a thing anymore to him.
Yeah.
They also, when they're in that living room having that awkward conversation, there's a dog who I guess just like gave birth to a bunch of puppies, and they zoom in on it, and the sound of the puppies like feeding on the mom's nipples is like so fucking loud and disturbing. Like, God,
they are going
terrible.
to town on them nipples, baby. They are really just hollowing that mama out.
Man, it's like, I don't dig it. I don't.
Like nothing I'd ever smelled before in my life.
But I think that's important though, because like that's kind of a reality. One thing I always talk about, one huge thing coming into adulthood was I used to work at a jewelry store, and there was like a ton of women who worked there. And at the time, like by time I worked there like 2.5 years, I think maybe close to 3 years. And by that time, like almost half the women at that point had become pregnant. And, but like we were all super chill and cool. And so they would just tell like these horror stories, like they were having pregnant. So I remember like discussions about brushing your nipples with toothbrushes so that they become like hard, like leather, so that they don't crack and bleed when your baby's trying to feed. And I just remember these things and thinking like, oh my God, of course these aren't things that aren't ever included in any kind of media or whatever, because it's like terrible, like to brush your nipples so that they don't bleed into your child's mouth. Like that's
you gotta
heinous.
Brush your nips.
But it's but it's also like a reality. So yeah, like showing this dog's feeding, the sound is terrible. But at the same time, it's like, that's real. Like you can't, like everybody wants to paint, oh, the baby, and you're glowing and it's so magical and everything. It's like, bitch, you got to brush your fucking nipples. Like that's just terrible.
There's a lot of media that kind of deals with sort of not even necessarily the dark side of parenting or being a mother or whatever. Like there's a lot of there's just a lot of like traumatic shit that goes on that people like to gloss over, because at the end of the day, in most people's case, they are very happy that they ended up, going through with it, because, they have a child that they love at that point, theoretically. So, I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems like everything that happens in this movie is built to make you so uncomfortable first and confused second, which I think is really fucking effective for being a dream. I don't know. That was kind of a train of thought. I'm just following what DL wants me to do.
There's a lot of bizarre shit going on. Like, to speak more about his apartment, the only like natural type of shit that we see in this movie that I can recall anyway, actually he has like a plant on his bedside table, but it's like not in
no pot.
Yeah, it's just like loose soil and just like kind of chilling there. And it almost looks like he's got piles of moss or some shit like on his dresser and just sort of strewn about. Like he's trying to bring some nature into his apartment, but it's like weird still and not really comforting in any way.
I had a theory about that thing, at least like a connection that I made that I thought anyway, that tree is like looking pretty morose, like or whatever, the little plant. It looks like just sticks sticking out of a pile of dirt. And in one of the more like dreamy dream sequence parts or whatever, one of the more dreamy parts of the movie, you see a much larger version of that thing sitting on the stage, and it begins to bleed as if it was like shot in the dirt. And then the blood like spills everywhere all over his like then fallen off head. And I don't know, like to me, I was like, okay, so I'm looking at this fucking thing. I think it represents maybe like the death of his private life, or his trying to keep his private life alive in some way, but he's inept at it. Has no time to pay attention to it. And then like when it starts to die, the one living thing left that he owns and is his personally is shot. So for lack of a better word. So I don't know that. I don't know how, like, I don't know if that resonates for anyone else, but to me, that was something that occurred to me.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out that, like, again, back to the birthing thing, I thought about Alien a lot while watching this movie this time around, because again, it's sort of like taking the trauma of childbirth and applying it to not necessarily to in this case, not necessarily to the male form, not the male body like they do in Alien, but instead to just the male psyche and like what it does to a male who doesn't have to directly interact necessarily with that, except by virtue of being, a decent person. And in his case, and in Henry's case, it ends up not being enough, and he ends up like killing the baby. So
and that's one thing that I kind of appreciate about this film, and it kind of goes both ways, I suppose, but I feel like it's maybe more acceptable now to explore it from the female's perspective, like maybe when you're talking about postpartum like depression and things like that. And we've covered movies like Inside that might deal with like the female's perspective of like a negative impact of pregnancy and childbirth and stuff like that. But there's really not a whole lot of movies that deal with a male's negative perception of having a child in the way that this kind of does. And there's the, the negative stereotypes of the, the deadbeat dad or the absentee father and things like that. But as far as like trying to sympathize and understand where a father tries to do the right thing, where it's like clear that you don't want to have a child, but this is thrust upon you, and you like do your best to support the woman and to like raise this child in a very terrible situation. It was interesting because not a lot of media like covers that, and it's a little maybe unfortunate that some of the only examples we have that are in this very obscure type dreamlike weird kind of movie. But I also appreciate it in the same vein because even though it's not covered a lot, I felt like a lot of it was very relatable, and not even necessarily to the child, but even the woman coming over and them like trying to figure out like sharing a bed. And of course she breaks down crying. It's like, oh, you don't mind getting married, do you? But then as soon as they have to be together, like she doesn't treat him particularly well. She totally bails on him and stuff like that. So I mean,
think the reverse is very much also true, because Henry.
I'm not saying like Henry is like the greatest, but I'm just saying
I just want to cover that as well.
No, so in general, I feel like it's a very relatable type of situation, but because so many movies are geared towards like, oh, everything works out, or oh, of course I love you, and we're going to make it work, you know, stuff like
from
that.
From the female point of view. And this movie is the male point of view of all the traumatic stuff. And the thing is, like, it's not that that's not a valid response, which is why this movie works for me in that regard, is because it is perfectly valid to have those fears and concerns and have them like distilled down into this weird like nightmare imagery.
Yeah.
But you can't say to somebody who's giving birth to your child, I don't know, it seems like you're not the one giving birth. You have way less to be afraid of. It's almost like callous for you to even like to even like really go deeply into like, boy, I'm really scared. Like, really? Because I have a person in my body. Like, there's a big.
See, but I feel like that type of perception, and not to say that you're wrong, but I feel like that almost invalidates the other person. It's like it almost makes people feel like they can't say like, I am scared. It's like, oh, well, you're scared. Well, I actually have to give birth. It's like, okay, well, I guess my emotions aren't valid at any point. Then
no, that's what I'm saying.
I guess I won't say anything.
Like, I'm saying that they are valid, but they're overshadowed. And it's tough for like it would be tough for me in that position, in a position of like I'm suddenly a father I didn't intend to be. It would be tough for me to be like commiserate with somebody who actually has to go through the act. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's not that it's invalid at all. In fact, that I like that it is validated in this movie in the form of this dream nightmare sequence, because it's so out there that it allows you to feel that for this guy, whereas you would normally just be like, yeah, but you gotta be there for your kid and take care of your child and participate, or else you're a piece of shit. Like there's just kind of no two ways about it. So I don't know. And then I forgot what I was gonna say. Actually, go on.
I wanted to
had another attack.
Jump in, Bob.
It was the idea of him like. I also made a note that he was like being a huge piece of shit to his new wife when he like, and only for a few minutes because she eventually bails, which, you know, is definitely on her, but he comes back and partially on her because he's not participating in the raising of this child. He's sitting on the fucking bed daydreaming about a moon-faced chick singing songs while his wife is like all day sitting there caring for this mutant child that neither one of them are real stoked to have in the first place. Like, you could participate, Henry. Jack, get your ass in there.
You want to bail on this thing, right? Let's just scooch on out of here.
I wanted to pose a question. There's a couple characters in here that are pretty ambiguous. Like, there's the mold man pulling the levers, and we got the big cheek lady who lives in the radiator. What the hell do you think these people represent? You guys have a take on it?
I don't know.
I thought the mold man was like kind of biology is what because he appears first, and I thought that opening sequence was like kind of like I said, like kind of showing like the conception or whatever. Yeah. And so
it's biological imperative, like drive.
That's kind of what I thought. And now I will say I have no idea what the moon lady is supposed to be. I don't. Please shed some light on this, because I was like, this is the one part, and I'm like, I don't really know.
Okay, so here for reference is the line from her big song. So in heaven, everything is fine. This woman is singing on stage. She's basking in light. He is sitting there fantasizing about her. I think she's representative of death and of particularly suicide and escape from your problems. And that's why at the end of the movie, after killing his child, and seeing his, I guess his biological imperative explode in his face, he embraces her directly and is living in her world. Like, when he envisions her gleefully stepping on smooshing little spermies that are falling from the sky.
Future kids.
All of these things. Yeah, all of the thing that cause you pain. You don't have to worry about that shit with me. I'll just crush it because everything's fine. I'm death.
Everything's fine, baby. See these cheeks? Everything's fine.
Cheeks don't lie.
Everything's fine. I agree.
Cheeks don't lie, moon lady.
I agree with your read on that, Randy. I kind of saw her as just like representing death.
Ooh, I like that though, because I didn't know. I was like,
the mold man. Cool, I kind of read the mold man as like being God, pulling the levers of life, so to speak, and causing you to procreate.
What was it?
You know.
I was looking at the IMDb, and he has a really interesting listing. Like he's credited interestingly. I'm gonna have to find it.
Oh, really?
It's like the man in the planet, or I think something.
Yeah,
like that.
the man in the planet. Which, yeah, I think that lends itself to the idea of a god figure of some kind. Beautiful girl across the hall, lady in the radiator, man in the planet.
Yeah,
man in the planet. And I don't know what I didn't see mold, by the way. I saw like leper. That was the first thing I was like,
I
guess I think I associated that later because it felt like mold was growing around the radiator. So I think I just kind of associated that in my mind.
I think that like there's a lot of Jack fantasizing in this movie, or Henry. I keep saying Jack because it's Jack Nance, but Henry fantasizing as an escape. You know what I mean? Like he fantasizes about the woman, he fantasizes about his lust, and then eventually fantasizes during his lustful act of coitus with the woman across the hall. But none of it really alleviates his problems, and they become increasingly more destructive to the point where that lustful stuff doesn't help him, and he starts envisioning his head falling off and then being obliterated and turned into eraser shavings. So
what's your interpretation of that? His head being turned into erasers?
It's that, like, it's that, like, because they have this scene of him, like, of them testing the eraser and then blowing the dust away. Mm-hmm. It's return to dust. Right. It's like, you can't do anything about this. You are on a one-way track, and it ends with you dying and turning into the rest of the universe.
He wants to erase himself, so to speak.
Yeah, and I don't know if he necessarily wants to or not in that moment. I think it's more of dread of what life actually is, which is it's a railroad track. It's not a fucking crossroads. You are going down like, you get to make choices you think, but whether or not you actually do is up to your philosophy. So
I also saw, I guess too, like the right before that scene, what makes his head pop off is the kid like takes his place. And I've always seen kind of like having children, this isn't the best perspective to have, but is almost like them like taking your life force, you know, like you see people before and after kids. Sure. No, it is. It's where this kid is like, okay, like this, like I need everything that makes you kind of like young and vital and everything like that. And that's eventually what kind of like
towards the kid in order to keep the kid alive and happy and good. Yeah. You have to take it takes so much of yourself to raise a child, as I understand it, that
I've heard.
I would never know because my illegits are completely fatherless. So no, I just like, it takes so much of you. And at least that's the fear I would imagine, certainly like me as a male without kids, that would be something that frightens me. If I'm not really freaked out by the concept, but just generally, I could definitely see that being the case. And it seems like it's definitely the case for him because he even imagines the child's face taking over his head. Like he loses his head and the child replaces him. That's what child rearing is raising something to basically replace you in the grand scheme of the universe, and making sure that they have all the tools and capabilities to do as well, if not better than what you have done. Like that's what fatherhood is. And that's a terrifying task for anybody. So and then at the end of the day, you're going to be like, if you're lucky anyway, really, you're going to be outlived by this thing that's replacing you. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to outlive something they're going to be outlived by something they've created, and so on and so on. It's the one-way track, and you're going to go, it's ashes to ashes and dust to dust, no matter what you do.
Yeah, unless you stab your mutant child to death, and then its giant disembodied head floats all around the room, terrorizing you, causing you to...
And then you just have a psychotic break, and
I've never grown up with a radiator. Like I've never lived in a place that it's always been like air conditioning or whatever. Can you kill yourself with a radiator? Like,
I don't think so, man.
Okay. Like in the way that you can like make a gas leak or I never grew up with gas. I know. We didn't grow up with gas. We didn't grow up with radiators.
Or basements.
I didn't know.
I think you can have a gas radiator or an electric radiator, as I understand it. So I guess
a
there's
gas
a way
leak,
to get
maybe
to leak. Yeah,
it could crash onto onto your head from
that was the thing. I was like, you could of course kill yourself with anything, but I didn't know because since you guys were kind of associating the Moon Lady as like death or escape and things like that, since she lives in the radiator and maybe he ultimately commits suicide, I didn't know if there was a way to do that.
And that's the warm comfort of the idea of checking out, killing yourself.
Maybe, but there's one other thing that should Bob. This is sort of like contextualizing for David Lynch. And do you guys know who David Foster Wallace is?
Yeah.
Familiar with him? Okay.
Author?
Yeah.
So David Foster Wallace apparently wrote, I haven't read anything he's written, I'm just aware of him. But he defined the idea of Lynchian, at least for himself, and a lot of people have adopted it. And to sort of put that question into perspective, this is how he describes Lynchian in a paraphrase. It's the juxtaposition of incredibly grotesque things with the incredibly banal things. And in that juxtaposition, it reveals the ways in which the grotesque is always contained within the banal or the mundane.
I like that.
So the idea of him like getting caught up and staring at a radiator, how many times have you caught yourself staring at a light switch or a fucking, whatever, just because you're deep in thought, either trying to daydream away something or just because you're in a situation where you have nothing to do. And you start to imagine things more interesting than the fucking light switch. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of what's happening there, at least for me.
Nice.
You're so well read, Randy.
I know.
Do you guys have...
La-di-da.
Do you guys have anything else you want to touch on before we rate this monstrosity?
To talk about like the killing scene, I would say we kind of gone scene by scene. We didn't really talk about where he kills it, which is pretty brutal.
It is.
Which it completely explains. I think it was Jacqueline on our Slack channel who brought the trivia to the table that David Lynch. What's the word I'm looking for? He took a cat and
dissected it.
Oh, dissected it.
I could not come up with that word for some reason. He dissected a cat in preparation of writing this movie or in the process of doing this movie. Oh. And I think that scene is clearly why, because it's like when he, opens up the cast or whatever it is.
Oh my
God. It's not a body in there. The cast was the body. There's organs within it and it's like lined with blood and viscera. So and then the way it opens is really disgusting. So it's pretty clear.
I liked even that aspect of it because even what you would expect, like the baby is in this thing and it's just like a white, circle or whatever encompassing it. And when you think about babies and like swaddling clothes and stuff like that, they're soft and it's a blanket. And when he goes to kill this thing or confront it at least, the thing covering it is like hard and he has to cut it off, and then once it's inside it's nothing but like blood and guts, and it's like, god damn, there's no anything about this child is terrible.
Dude,
even its clothes aren't soft or like warm or anything. It's like it's a fucking hard cold cast. It contains fucking mutant organs and shit. It's like, god damn.
I think like that combined with, and just not long before that happens, the child stops crying, which it's been doing the whole time, and it's been really disconcerting as a viewer, just being like, oh my god, and like it's supposed to be, because that's what being a father's like, apparently, is just listening to crying a lot. But and our brains are hardwired, like again, genetically, to find that sound, is very, very disturbing. So but like between the crying and the killing is the baby wet Yoshi laughing at him, like mocking him by laughing at him. And I think like it's just showing really more than anything a progression of his disdain for this child, and like the child is literally starting to become an antagonist for him rather than just a disgusting nuisance to his life. Well, yeah. And then eventually that's just like the next step to him then, like looking at this thing and saying, I gotta kill it.
What one moment I actually laughed out loud that's just reminded me of that, which I think was a pretty great moment of like dark humor, was when his like chick bails on him or whatever, and he's like, oh, I guess I gotta take care of this kid. And at one point he's like, I think he says something like, oh, I'll take your temperature. Are you sick or something? Are you sick? Oh, yeah. And as soon as he does, it just like burst into terrible sore.
Yeah, so
that's sick. Even though it's so terrible, he was just like, oh, I'll take your, he's trying to like do his best. He's like, sick. Oh, I'll take your temperature or whatever. Oh, are you sick? And it literally just burst into terrible sores. He's like,
it looks like it's covered in coffee grounds.
I guess you are sick. It's just like, oh shit.
I laughed out loud multiple times at this movie this time, and this is my third time watching it. When his head falls off, it never fails to make me laugh. When the dad's talking about his fucking knees and freaking out, I'm laughing. That shit makes me laugh so
Look
hard.
at my knees.
It's like, people think pipes just grow. They don't. I'd pipe this whole neighborhood. Look at my knees.
Oh, coot.
I love that shit. And the little like even the little like man-made chickens and shit, like even the food in this movie is not natural. That's so fucking interesting. I don't know.
So
and it just makes me that dinner scene is absolutely like dark comedy central, and there's really no two ways about it. Especially having seen many interviews with David Lynch at this point, the man's got like a sense of humor about things. So he's not like, I don't know. It's not accidental that we're laughing at it. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah. Anything else? You guys want to rate this thing?
Dude, let's rate it.
Let's do it. Out of 5, Randy, kick us off. How you feel about Eraserhead?
I feel pretty good about it. Obviously, I'm actually pleasantly surprised at how little I had to actually counteract negativity from Rob. So I guess it's all for show, huh, Bob?
I dislike this movie, but we'll get there. Continue.
Well, to that end, I do want to point out, this is something I wanted to make sure and say because of that, is that this is a movie that's perfectly fair to dislike. Mm-hmm. It's not a movie that's easy to watch, much like, say, Martyrs or something, in a different way, obviously. But that's not a movie that's fun. Like, this movie is not fun. You
came for fun?
Yeah, exactly. This is not... This isn't Tokyo Drift, you know? Sometimes you want popcorn, sometimes you want a meal, and sometimes you want a meal you can't get anywhere else.
Sometimes you want food poisoning.
Yeah. Sometimes you want grotesquely colored Baby Yoshi wet chicken.
You want
Cornish hens.
You want it.
Yeah, no, I just think that's important to say that, having a negative reaction to this movie is the point. So if having a negative reaction to a movie makes you not want to watch it again, that's perfectly normal. But yeah, I've already kind of gushed about the things I love about this movie. I would say that if I had I don't have a ton of critiques. It's hard to critique a movie that you're allowed to frame however you want, and you're actually encouraged to frame however you want. But the way that I could frame this, that like this time around I'm watching, I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm identifying a little too much with the eventual child murderer in this movie. Maybe I shouldn't be so willing to be on his side, even though he's in uncomfortable situations and he's still cheating on his wife, and he's still ignored his wife up until the point where he couldn't ignore the child anymore, ignored taking his responsibilities. He's not a good dude necessarily. He's not the worst dude in the world. And he has, I think, pretty justifiable, fears, or at least understandable fears about fatherhood and all those things. But maybe I shouldn't be so on his side about everything. I don't know. I don't have a ton of hardline critiques about this movie. The hardest critique I can give it is that it's really not for everybody. I hear a lot of it's easy to call this movie pretentious and shit like that. To me, that doesn't really hold a lot of water because, like I said, sometimes you want one kind of meal and sometimes you want another. You know, this is the kind of meal that you go to when you want to be challenged by it or want to venture into the unknown and make up your own decision about something that you know nothing about or have no frame of reference for. I don't know. I think that's pretty valuable to have that kind of movie on hand. I think it's valuable to have a kind of movie that's all about the experience of anxiety more than it is about the narrative of anxiety. I don't know. I think that's I don't know. I just think it's a valuable thing to have around. I think it's not gonna win box office receipts. I'll tell you that fucking much. But it's clearly won a lot of accolades because it's one of a kind. And thank God that something like this exists, because if there didn't exist, it would be zero of a kind, and we wouldn't have the opportunity to have that kind of experience. So overall, I feel really positively about this movie. It's not my favorite David Lynch movie by any stretch. That might go to the Twin Peaks movie, or it might go to Blue Velvet, but it's third probably in my list of David Lynch movies. But that said, I am going to give it a 4 out of 5, I think, because it is such a hard movie to watch. Even though it's short, it feels like it drags because it intentionally does at some points. And, just because it's intentional doesn't mean that it's, something valuable all the time. And this, for the most part, I would say that this movie has a lot of value to offset its challenging nature, but not entirely. So I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
All right. High praise from Randy. Let's jump over to Juice. How you feel about Eraserhead?
Man, it's tough. I didn't necessarily enjoy. I was happy that I watched this film. I'm happy that it exists, and I was engaged in it when I watched it, and really had a lot of like emotional reactions to it. And so I kind of come away with it with a positive thought in my mind. I don't really want to watch it again. And it's weird with a movie like this because it is supposed to be displeasurable. So it's weird to say like, oh, it's great to watch, because it's not really even supposed to be. So, with the sound designs, everything looks gross. It kind of focuses on like highlighting and bringing to life negative emotions. And so it's hard to be like, I don't know. It's weird to attach positive reaction to things like that because you just like psychologically don't want to. But I am glad. One thing that I wanted to point out, it was weird. This came out in the 70s, the late 70s. And however, though, with it coming out in that time, I feel like it influenced a lot of like obscure 90s things that I didn't realize at the time. So there's like a Bjork video that came out in the 90s called Army of Me that I remember like watching when I was younger. Yeah. They're like Tool videos, even things like Ren and Stimpy and things. I feel like were maybe like people coming into adulthood at that time that were influenced somehow by this movie and inspired by it. And also on top of that, there's a David Lynch PS2 commercial. He was asked to make a PS2 commercial. And it's funny though, because it's wacky and obscure, but it's still feels very 90s to me. Like, even though it's like Lynch and for the time, it's like, oh, this is weird. Ultimately, like 20 years removed, to me, it still feels like of its time. Like, oh, that's so 90s or early 2000s. I don't know. It's weird to see it through that lens. It's weird to see maybe how many things this thing influence and has just kind of lived in my subculture that I didn't quite realize, and that were like brought to life. And I was like, oh shit, I'm glad that this inspired so many things that I found value in throughout my life now. So with that being said, I think I'm just going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I appreciate a movie that explores emotions that are kind of taboo or things that aren't covered often, but it is a difficult watch, and it's something I don't really want to watch again. So I'll end up with a 3.
All right. 3 from Juice.
Bob.
Yo.
You were so excited to watch Eraserhead. Out of 5,
it's a 5.
What you gonna give this bad boy?
It's a big stinking 5.
Thanks, Bob. All right, on to Rhonda Rob.
All right, Rob, you can speak.
In regards to this,
skip to the end.
There we go. In regards to this movie, I would like to quote the great Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. It's art. Anything is anything. Which I think definitely applies to this movie to some degree, but also, to be fair to David Lynch, like, he does have somewhat of a narrative that he's trying to convey. It's just wrapped up in this, dream sequence or nightmare sequence or however you want to describe it. And I think that sort of works to its benefit, but then also not so much in some ways, because it's like a very easy, like almost, I feel like you could use it as a crutch and just like throw in some like wacky imagery and be like, what? It's a dream. You just read into it. And whatever you get out of it is right. There is no wrong answer. It's just like kind of an easy thing to say, that's just kind of how I feel about it. Anyways, this movie is terribly anxiety inducing, like we talked about, which is very uncomfortable intentionally, but I enjoy some of the imagery. It does what it's trying to do successfully. I think it makes you feel very uncomfortable, and that is absolutely the whole point of this movie. I just don't really enjoy it very much. I got to give Lynch credit because I think he did achieve what he set out to achieve, but my enjoyment level is just like a 0 on this thing. I kind of went on a bit of a ride, like right after I watched this movie. I was so not about it, like, fuck you, David Lynch, in my mind anyway. I wasn't like screaming at the walls or anything. But then like throughout, just contemplating it over the week and like talking about it with you guys, I've come around a little bit to it. But I'm still just going to land at a 2.5, I think.
That's much higher than I anticipated from you.
That sounds fair. Sounds like Bob's growing up.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
I had a thought about Bob's.
No.
Oh, God. Last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, we had a supercut of my likes, me saying like all the time. I feel like it would be appropriate at some point to get a supercut of Bob's Oh, God.
I don't say, oh, God, like nearly as much as you say like. So for me to do that, I just don't. If somebody else wants to do that, that's cool, man, but I'm not doing
That's
oh, God.
That's a lot of work.
I think we should do a supercut of all the times Justin decides to load undue extra work on the rest of us.
Hey, y'all do this thing. You got the time.
I do this great idea. I'm an ideas man,
Oh,
That's what I bring to the table.
All I got to do is kick back, put my feet up, and just let the ideas flow and let the peons take care of the business.
Hey, I got a new job for you. Pays nothing. I know you got the time. Just do it. Soju. Just do it.
What? I'm an ideas man.
Like, what if you took all the times you said, oh God, and then put them all the fuck together
What if we found every time we said the word the and stacked it on top of each other and made a super the
loudest the.
See, Randy, that's important because that idea is not as good as my idea. That's why I'm the ideas man.
That's right.
Hey man, it's a dream. It could be anything.
I have an idea. Let's start aggregating our scores. For the first time ever, the aggregate for Eraserhead is going to be a 3.2. Let's go ahead and do that for every show from here on out, guys. That's a good idea, right?
Fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
I just am trying to segue into the aggregate for this fucking movie. It's a 3.2.
Okay. As the person who put together the spreadsheet that has the aggregate.
Okay, now we're throwing around.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah.
You're the spreadsheet man.
Trying to ice skate uphill.
I'm the ideas man.
I'm just here to say, oh God, apparently.
Oh God.
We're replacing Rob with Robert Englund, we decided.
Bob Englund.
I thought it was going to be Hank Hill.
Bobby.
Oh God.
Let's go ahead and jump over to the Rotten Tomatoes segment. Holla holla.
Certified fresh to death.
To death. All right, everybody. If you are new to the show, this is our Rotten Tomatoes segment where I'm going to give these two gentlemen the chance to guess at what the critics and users thought of this movie on a scale of 0% to 100%. We're going to start with the critics score here, and there's only a count of 58. It's an older movie, and sort of still, even though it's well known, it's not as well known as Star Wars, which came out the same year. So it's only got 58 scores. Let's start with Rob. Rob, what do you think the critics believe about this movie?
Critics, do they have their nose firmly planted in David Lynch's ass? Or
not as deeply as your face is in the salt lick right now.
Understood. I'll just go with the comedy number 69, please.
69.
When in doubt,
Rob.
69.
The comedy number is always available for you. Juice, what do you think?
I feel like with this low number, there's got to be some bootlickers up in there, but it can't be too high because this movie's so obscure. But I think it's
not
probably,
that obscure.
I think, well, I mean, just like in its content, not the like film reputation itself. So, but I do think it's probably higher than 69. So I will go 75.
All right. Juice, you're going to take it, but you are far from correct because this movie has a 90% certified fresh score.
Shit.
Incorrect.
Wow.
They are just breathing that Lynch fart. Just give it straight to the nostrils.
That's quite high.
There was a 0% chance that we were going to get through this fucking movie without Rob using the term fart sniffer.
Ooh, somebody had liver and onions for dinner.
Yeah, I think maybe that was you, buddy. Get it checked out. I think maybe that's the shit in your drawers.
It's just slowly leaking out. Bob has no control.
It's man-made. So here's what the critics' consensus has to say about this. David Lynch
is too tossed, Bob.
You're gonna lick that asshole raw, buddy.
I only let grannies toss this salad. All right.
David Lynch's surreal Eraserhead uses detailed visuals and creepy score to create a bizarre and disturbing look into a man's fear of parenthood, which is all accurate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there we go. How about we go to the user score now? Let's start. I started with Bob, so let's start with Juice this time. What do you think the audience believes about this movie? And bear in mind that there are 57,477 user ratings, so significantly more.
With that many, I feel like it's got to be significantly lower. I feel like this is the type of movie that would piss some people off enough to come on to Rotten Tomatoes and give it a low score. Like I could see somebody be like, you got to watch Eraserhead. It's a classic. And people watch it and being so fucking mad about it. I could totally see that. So I think it's got to be significantly lower. I don't know how low though. I'm going to say 55. I'm going to go that.
55. Okay. All right, Bobby, what are you thinking?
I'm going to go with a 50 on this one.
50. All right, dead center. Well, Juice are going to take it again, but also still far from correct because this is an 83%.
Oh my God. That's surprising.
Yeah, wow. I was surprised by that myself. And, you know. But
hey, we're men of the people. That's pretty close to ours. Well,
not really.
Yeah, I guess not. Never mind. I was thinking of Randy's score 4. Actually, never mind. Randy's man of the people.
I'm a man of all people, of all occasions. A man of all seasons, if you will.
I'm just an ideas man. And sweeping the board this week.
Oh, God.
So, in our new traditional style, I'm going to read at least one negative review because they're funnier. Let's go to what a man called Christopher Lloyd, but apparently not that one, had to say about this film. Which is, and he gave it a 3 out of 5, so it's not that negative, I guess.
Okay.
It's just lower than their threshold. German expressionism meets grindhouse schlock. Eraserhead is a student film turned cult classic that probably would have been better as a 20-minute short. Which, by the way, it started as. That's my addendum.
Actually, I don't completely disagree with that.
I think that I like the length that it is. I think it could be a little shorter, but I don't have a problem with its length personally.
Yeah, a lot
I'm
of
engaged all the way through.
I was pretty like the eraser part.
But when we see the lady in the radiator for the second time is where I started to get a little fed up. It's like, all right,
pissed off.
All right, we get it. We get it, dude. You're an artist.
Oh, here's a 1 out of 10. Nothing more than a pretentious, incoherent, and boring exercise in self-indulgent weirdness.
I love being incontinent.
Is that from Bob69 at hotmail.com?
So that's from Big Willie Bob at geocities.org.
Geocities.gov.
Likes a big salad, Bob at Hotmail.
That's his away message is, I like a big salad. Bring the dressing.
The dressing. Yep, that's me. I wrote all that.
All right. So there we go. That is our Rotten Tomatoes segment. I believe now, Juice, do you have trivia?
Oh, I got some trivia, baby.
We can move right into the trivia, can't we?
Let's do it.
It's totally time for trivia.
All righty, then. I think I can turn some of these into a game, so I am excited.
Synthesize.
David Lynch. So I mentioned before he directed a PS2 commercial, which you might find surprising. However, this is not the first time he's been asked to direct some kind of more popular things. David Lynch has been asked to direct a Star Wars film. Can you guys guess which Star Wars film he was asked to direct? Let's start with Randy.
So is this a Star Wars movie that has not come out or one that did come out? And he didn't.
It has already come out, and he chose not to direct it, but he was asked to. He was asked to direct a Star Wars film.
Okay. When you say film, do you mean a wide, like a theatrical film?
Yes,
right.
A Star Wars film has come out.
Christmas special.
No, a Star Wars film has come out that is a popular. It's within the regular Star Wars, whatever you want to call it.
I'm surprised that George Lucas would even consider giving up the reins this early, but I don't know. Unless it was recent, I don't know. I guess I feel like it has to be earlier. So I'm going to go with Return of the Jedi.
Okay. Robert?
I'm going to guess... man, I don't know. That Solo, the Han Solo one.
The one that came out a couple years ago.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess that's wrong.
Randy is going to get a ding-a-ling.
Shoot.
So the trivia says that Mel Brooks watched Eraserhead, saw it, and offered Lynch the chance to direct The Elephant Man in 1980. Lynch accepted.
I fucking forgot about that.
Yeah.
Mel Brooks produced that movie.
George Lucas asked Lynch to direct Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, 1983. Lynch turned it down.
That seems like a wise move on his part. I mean, how much freedom could he actually have? Yeah. That's the thing is
but a Star Wars.
He doesn't do. Yeah, but I mean, he's a director in his own right. He has his own things to do.
I don't know, man. I think maybe you should just sell out. You know?
Well, David Lynch is very much not huge on selling out. I've watched an interview with him where somebody was like, it's becoming more common for people to have product placement in their movies in exchange for big budget increases. What do you think about that? And he goes, fucking bullshit. It's fucking bullshit.
I appreciate that.
So
actually.
I do too. But yeah, then he did a PS2 commercial though, so who the fuck knows?
Right. Got to pay rent, David. Got to pay rent.
Yeah.
If they give you money to do whatever you want, which is what I assume they did with that commercial, having seen it, then I think then that's fair enough. You just put a PS2 logo at the end, and you can call it a commercial.
I think Rob's gonna like this trivia.
Oh boy.
David Lynch had a lot of trouble getting financial assistance from the American Film Institute because the script was only 20 pages long. He received a grant from AFI, but after about 3 years of production, Jesus Christ, he ran out of money. At one point, Terrence Malick, I don't know who that is. Malick, okay. Terrence Malick screened the film for a potential financial backer who walked out calling the movie bullshit.
Understandable. Seeing this
Terrence
halfway
Malick
made, yeah, bullshit. Yeah.
I haven't seen much of Terrence Malick's work, but I don't know. None of it seems like, I don't know. Badlands has got a good reputation. Thin Red Line might have a good reputation. The Tree of Life. Did anybody see any of these movies? I haven't seen them. Like any of you guys, I mean.
I feel like maybe I've seen Tree of Life, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. I'm just trying to decide whether or not I should give a shit what he thinks.
The film star Jack Nance never knew nor cared exactly what Eraserhead meant. In an interview with the Twin Peaks 1990 fanzine, wrapped in plastic. Yeah. Whoa. Nance said, "You guys get way too deep over this business. I don't take it at all that seriously. It's only a movie." I added that little tone for you.
Dude, Jack Nance was a sweet fucking dude.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he's like everything I've seen about him or from him or whatever makes me like him a lot more.
The script was influenced by David Lynch's reading as a film student. Franz
Kafka?
Yeah, thank you. 1950 novella, The Metamorphosis, and Nikolai Gogol 1836 short story, The Noose, were strong influences on the screenplay.
That makes sense. You guys know The Metamorphosis, right? Did you ever read that one?
I did not.
Oh, it's pretty common in classrooms. That's why I thought that. But
okay,
it's
we're not as
about
well
a guy who turns into a cockroach. I mean, I haven't read it. I'm not saying that I read it. I'm aware of a lot of things, but I read very little.
Yeah. Fucking David Foster.
It's about a dude
Wallace
turning into
here.
a fucking cockroach, and that's it. A guy just turns into a cockroach. So
interesting.
It's a very, very well loved book.
Oh no! Oh, hang on. The script is thought to have been inspired by David Lynch's fear of fatherhood.
What?
His daughter Jennifer Lynch has been born with severely clubbed feet, requiring extensive corrective surgery as a child. Jennifer has claimed that her own unexpected conception and birth defects were the basis for this film's themes. Oh,
jeez.
She don't feel too bad. She went on to have a career as a director herself. So.
Yeah. Okay. And then finally, I guess Stanley Kubrick made the cast of The Shining 1980 watch this film, among others, to get in the mood for filming a horror picture. So this is a 2 thumbs up from Stanley Kubrick.
Cool.
I think that's about all the interesting. I mean, there's a ton, as you can imagine. Script was only 22 pages long. There's no dialogue for the first 10 and a half minutes of this movie. Oh my God. But yeah, it kind of goes on and on and on, and we got other things to do. So let's go hunting.
I do want to add one little thing real quick. Apparently the production for this film was over the course of 5 years. And what's his face, main dude, Jack Nance, kept his hair cut that way for the entirety of the 5 years, apparently, which is that's nuts.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's an interesting haircut. It doesn't look terrible. It's just really bizarre looking.
Right? Yeah, I think they just kept running out of money, man. I think.
Yeah, it was literally a student film. So it started its life as a student film. So it kind of had a long road to hoe before it could actually get distribution and all that shit.
Just keep hoeing. Keep hoeing. Let's go hunting.
Cooter of the week. All right. Let's go hunting. Cooter. What is a cooter? Straight chillin' exclusive. Here's what we bring to the table, folks.
Is the one extra syllable really that hard to bring to the table?
How many ideas,
how chill Soju is, you know? I mean, Soju's a cool guy.
He's so lax.
Bob wants to say, oh God, so bad. The face.
Oh, my Lord.
He's biting it back.
Oh,
all right.
I only drink my Soju chill. You know what I'm saying, brah? But hunt.
Soju's not like sake. People don't like it all warmed up, you know. They like it chilled and relaxed. All right. So, what is a cooter? Cooter is a character type. Very prominent in horror films, but not exclusive. In order to be considered a cooter, you have to hit 3 of these 5 points. You have to hit sexual deviancy, manipulation, smug arrogance, overall look and attire, and overall patheticness. Those are the 5 points of cooterdom. There are very few characters in this film. So, can we ask, is Henry a cooter?
Wait,
or is anybody else?
I always try and write this down because I can never remember. The second one. What was the second one? Second point?
The point? Oh.
Yeah. I can never get it straight.
Smug, arrogant, sexual deviancy, manipulation.
Manipulation. That's the one I missed. Okay. All right.
So Henry,
I don't know if Henry's a cooter.
Let's run it down. Let's run it down. Okay,
Yeah, let's
attire. His haircut, I think, counts as attire because it's pretty
I
bizarre.
would go with a tie.
I'd be fine with that.
I'd go for a tire, sure.
Yeah,
All right.
sure.
Does he manipulate?
I don't think so.
I don't
I don't think he
either.
does.
I don't think so.
I don't think
he does.
Yeah, I think if anything, I don't think he's even manipulated, really.
No, I don't think so. Sexually deviant.
Maybe emotionally, but
Second, I mean, he
He
cheats.
cheats, yeah, but it's
he cheats.
I don't think that's as deviant. That's not a deviation.
it's
so much.
consensual. It's
She comes in and his wife is bailed at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude needs a score.
he needs.
Score!
Oh my!
Give me that score. He's having a rough time. And she knows he's got a kid.
Kicker down here.
This woman, she has delivered the message that his girlfriend's inviting him over to dinner, and she knows that he has a mutant baby and still decides to sleep with him. I say that's a go.
Yeah,
that's a green
fine.
light.
That's probably fine.
Yeah, she gets a good eye full of wet baby Yoshi, and she is nonplussed for the first.
And we're not talking about
anyway.
his penis here either. You know what I'm saying?
No, we ain't.
Not yet.
Ego. Does he think highly of himself? I would say
Smug arrogance.
I would say nah.
No, I don't get that impression.
So.
Pathetic.
He's kind of pathetic.
Yeah, he's pathetic.
Yeah, I'd give pathetic. I mean,
he's pathetic.
It's only two though.
To be fair.
His anxiety is so high that it's kind of easy to understand to some extent, but it's still pretty pathetic that it's pathetic to me that he's not like willing or able to help his wife out at first, and then it becomes pathetic that his big solution to his problems is to murder suicide essentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I'll give him those 2 points, and then what's left?
That's it. That's all five.
Oh, that was it. Okay,
Two
that's all
out of
five.
2 out of 5 is not going to get you there, Henry. You got off easy.
No.
I don't think we got enough out of any other character to even test the waters.
The
with him
only
either.
other one that I kind of was thinking about was Mary's mom, because she's sexual deviancy right off the back. She starts trying to make moves on Henry.
That's true.
Yeah, she does.
Kissing on his neck. That's
Yeah.
She also orgasms at the sight of chicken being cut.
I would say she's a little manipulative, I guess, and self-important in the fact that she's sort of, I don't know, she invites this dude over and then she's interrogating him and pretty much tells him straight up that he will marry her daughter and then they're going to go raise this fucking kid together. And she also orgasms at dinner. There's just a lot of weird shit rolled up into this character that I think kind of.
She also tosses a salad with her grandma.
And lights
she
a
does.
cigarette for her. I don't know, man. There's some weird.
I licked her asshole a little bit.
Yeah, how was it?
It was pretty good. It was all right. It wasn't great, but it was fine.
So I don't
That
know.
was fine.
Sexual deviancy. I feel like she's definitely smug and maybe manipulative. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I don't know the manipulation part.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like we don't spend enough time with this woman to give her the coveted title of
I
Cooter of
think
the week.
there's
Coveted.
this is a David Lynch movie. Bizarre is a far more accurate description than
True.
Cooter.
Yeah,
I think.
I don't know if David Lynch knows how to do the Cooter right. I
Oh.
don't think he does.
I mean,
Someone's never
excuse
seen
me.
Blue Velvet. That's very clear.
Yeah, exactly. Excuse me. We got fucking Frank Booth, and we got what's his name, Mr. Horn from Twin Peaks,
Yeah.
Maybe he had to grow into it.
and fucking Leo.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's plenty.
Leo.
Just not in this
Leo's a
movie.
Cooter.
Oh shit. Throwback. Damn. Woo. Twin
about,
Peaks.
What
It's been
about
a hot
that big
minute.
cheek lady? She's looking weird, right?
She's okay. She's got a tire.
Yeah.
She's manipulating him. in
Double cheeked
heaven.
up on a Thursday afternoon.
Everything is fine in heaven.
Right.
Just kill yourself,
He's
Henry.
manipulating him to
Just
kill
kill
himself. That's true.
yourself.
That's too.
Everything-
But she's also
fine.
not real. Even if you give this
Let's
movie enough
finish.
credence.
Sorry,
go
you
ahead.
got two. You got 2 out of 5.
Just got
right there.
look.
Is
Okay.
she's sexually deviant? I don't know. She's stepping on his
squishes the sperm.
She's squirting sperms.
Yeah. So
I mean,
that's-
is that a kink? Is that a thing?
She seems to really get off on it.
But does she orgasm at the
I like
dinner
to
table?
scorch your
just-
sperm.
I just want you to step on my sperms. That's really what I'm into. That's
Well, just squirt them out there on the floor. I'll step on them.
Yeah, that's a real easy kink to fulfill.
Let me put on my steel toe boots.
Yeah, she
that
didn't
really
even
gets you
take her
going,
shoes
huh?
off. She's-
You want barefoot? You want cleats? What you need?
But here's the thing: do you have to pay more for the cleats or more for the barefoot? What costs
more for the barefoot? More, it's more. That's more of a cost to her.
Well, you don't have to go
cleats
buy the
are a
shoes.
specialized footwear.
That's right.
Also, I love that we jumped immediately to the fact that somebody would have to pay for that. There's no way anybody would consensually do this without money.
Not getting that for free.
There's someone for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's going to step in a puddle for you, it's going to cost. That's what I'm saying.
And it's definitely not going to make a sound.
Especially in cleats.
Oh, so I don't know. She's got attire. She's got the manipulation. Sexual deviancy is not quite there. Pathetic.
I think she's got 2.5.
Yeah,
not pathetic.
She's her face
she's
lumpy yabos. Is that what's up with her face?
Her face is clear. Like, to me, it's clearly trying to make like the trip to the moon face.
Yes, actually, that is actually exactly what I thought.
Between her hair
too.
and the cheeks,
yeah,
it's like
that's what I thought too. Yeah,
got it. And she's not she doesn't have an ego that we can. I mean, I don't know, but she's stepping on a sperm. I don't know. We'll give her a 2. I don't think
she's stepping on a sperm.
Bob's really, sometimes I'll listen back and Bob just like is quick to shut down a cooter, and other times Bob is just reaching.
I don't know, man. I just want
to make something work.
Sometimes you just got to like work through it step by step, and you'll uncover a hidden cooter and be like, "Holy shit!"
Okay,
we almost.
Sometimes I'm doing that though, and Bob is quick to be like,
always trying to skate on me.
Bob's like, "Nope, move along."
Sometimes I'm just a couple steps ahead of you, man. I don't know what else to say.
Sometimes Rob's trying to get the show to the end of the
also
episode.
That.
Probably.
Also that sometimes. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we don't really have a defined cooter in this movie unless David Lynch is a cooter. I don't know him personally, but I guess maybe somebody could draw that conclusion.
Oh, Bob.
I just don't know.
My socks are on fire.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the social hour. We got to let our
social hour
down.
Shake it out.
All right, get your cocktails out and your cocks out.
I don't know. Can we say that cooter hunting is part of the social hour? That's that's
pretty
fun,
social. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty
Even
social.
Trivia, really. Trivia is pretty social too.
Yeah,
it's a game.
Actually, we play a game with Rotten Tomatoes. It's all pretty social.
Yeah.
Who gives a rat's ass?
Yeah. Let's talk about what we've been watching.
Hey, gang, what you been watching?
Randy, what you been watching, man?
What have I been watching? So again, I'm kind of stuck in a situation where I have only a tube TV, some VHSs, and a few DVDs to pick from. So I've watched a couple things that way. I watched Mel Brooks's High Anxiety, released also in '77, actually.
Oh, I've never seen that.
It's not his best to me. Like it doesn't quite hit the same. It's not as silly or slapstick or it is, and just not as humorous ways to me.
I see.
But I do like it for what it is, which is that it's a direct parody of Hitchcock films. So there's a lot of like Hitchcock humor in there, which I always liked Hitchchcock. I grew up on him. My sister was obsessed with him. Yeah. So yeah, I like it for that, but it's not the funniest that he's put out. There's a reason that it's not brought up as much as Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, that sort of thing. I also watched Death Becomes Her. Are you guys familiar with that one? From early 90s. It's an early 90s horror comedy about it's got fucking Bruce Willis. Almost couldn't think of it. Bruce Willis, Meryl Streep, and I'm gonna have to look it up. Goldie Hawn, that's what it was. Goldie Hawn. So these two women are basically like career and sexual rivals for the heart of Bruce Willis, who is starts the movie as a world famous plastic surgeon, and they're all, both these women are also obsessed with looking like youthful and beautiful. And eventually, they find this potion that they can take that will prevent them from aging, but it also keeps them alive forever. And it's a really interesting premise. It's not the funniest movie in the world, but I have a lot of nostalgia for it because I grew up watching it with my sister also.
Would you do it?
Huh? No, hell no.
The potion?
Hell no. But the whole joke of the movie, the whole like comedy comes from the fact that like pretty much as soon as both women take this potion, they're like scheming against each other, trying to get each other murdered or whatever, and also become beautiful forever and all this shit. But they almost immediately either fall down the stairs or get shot through the stomach, and there's no like regrowth, like you don't recover, so you just kind of have to fake it. So they're like basically shambling corpses through half the movie
Yeah.
And they don't get they have to live forever. They're stuck living forever, and they have to like team up and shit. It's fun. I mean, those are some pretty good fucking actors. Meryl and Goldie are killing it. Fucking Bruce Willis plays a character. He plays like a pretty meek character, which is unusual for him. He's just kind of like, it's kind of like they took Seymour Krelborn but gave him a little more spunk and a little bit more violence in his personality. But otherwise is pretty much that kind of character. It's a fun movie. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was something I finally got to watch because HBO Max finally kicked off and there's some Adult Swim programming on there. And I finally got to watch some of Primal by Genndy Tartakovsky. Do you guys know about this animated show?
No.
So wait, is that the one where they're in high school? They're animals and they're in high school?
No. This is not a comedy. It's an action. It's Genndy Tartakovsky who did Dexter's Lab and Samurai Jack, and it's more in line with a Samurai Jack sort of feel. And it's about a caveman back in prehistoric times whose family gets murdered and who then befriends a T-Rex whose family was also murdered, and they team up and they just start like slaying ass for 5 episodes. And it is fucking A, gorgeous, and B, thrilling. It is fucking great. It is a perfect sort of follow-up to his return to Samurai Jack, where he actually started getting like, actually violent and made for adult sort of violence. And this really continues that because it's unapologetically brutal. It lives up to the title of Primal, but there's no words. Not a single word is spoken throughout the entire series because they're cavemen and animals. So it's beautiful. It's brilliant storytelling, and it actually has a lot of emotional resonance without ever uttering a word. So I can't speak highly enough about it. And there's 5 more episodes that are supposed to come out. I don't know exactly when, but I am really excited to see how this thing continues.
How is it? What, like a 20-30 minute deal?
Yeah, I think it's a full like half-hour program with commercial break built in.
Okay.
And like I said, it's on HBO Max now. I didn't have access to it before, but I love Genndy Tartakovsky. Like his animation style in general is just one of my favorites. And this is like a showcase for that in a level that, not very many animators get on, TV anyway.
Okay.
Sweet deal. Juice, what you been watching?
So I covered Parasite this week on Horrorphoria, so I watched that again. And actually to kind of prepare for it, but also for a couple other reasons. I watched a couple other Bong Joon-ho films. So I went back and watched Snowpiercer, but also because I was watching that Snowpiercer series, and they're doing that damn thing with the series where they release them like 1 episode at a time. So in order to finish this like kind of mediocre series that like I'm kind of lukewarm on anyways, but now I'm like 6 episodes deep, I'm like, God damn it, I have to like wait for this shit. But I wanted to go back and watch Snowpiercer because I kind of want to make sense of it a little bit, but also refresh myself on some of the director's earlier work. And I gotta say, I watched that and another one of his films that's on Netflix that came out not too long ago called Okja. And with both of those films, I kind of forgotten. It's been a while since I saw Snowpiercer, but I've forgotten that it's like half English, half Korean, which is kind of interesting now going back and watching it. And it was the same thing with Okja because like Jake Gyllenhaal is in Okja and like Tilda Swinton is in Okja, but then the main characters are Korean and they do the kind of like the same thing where it's like half Korean and half English. So it's kind of interesting that he was doing that for a bit. But man, it makes me kind of surprised that Parasite is as good as it is because as much as these like movies have like some good things about them, and I always like Snowpiercer. I like The Host too. I haven't watched it recently, but he is very much typically more, I guess, about the ideas behind it. Like Oakjaw is definitely more about like eating meat and like harvesting meat and stuff like that. And whereas Snowpiercer is very much about like class and stuff like that. And some of the characters are really kind of like wacky in how they're written, and some of the situations have like the general story kind of has a lot of holes, and it's more about the idea of these things. Like, let's showcase these extreme ideas of class or these extreme ideas of like eating meat. And whereas like Parasite is definitely much more balanced across the board, like good characters, good writing, good cinematography, whereas these other ones are more kind of centralized on the idea. So it made Parasite even kind of that much more impressive, because I was like, man, it seems like he took a really big leap, because I think before Parasite, Oakjaw was his like most recent movie before Parasite. So I don't know, I was kind of surprised by that. It was an interesting kind of read to kind of like compare these films that he's made in the past. But yeah, I watched those, and I think that's pretty much most of what I've been watching so far. So just a lot of half English, half Korean stuff lately.
Sweet deal.
Bob.
Yo.
It's been a week and a half since we talked last. What have you been watching in that time? You've been in quarantine.
I have been in quarantine.
You had a Rona
Eraserhead on repeat, I heard.
Yeah. Had a run-in with a Rona.
Special features. Yeah. All the special features that Steelbug.
Don't have it. I am Rona free, which is good. But it's officially summertime. And
some summertime.
I've been wanting to go back through the Friday the 13th franchise, so I started doing that. I watched part 1 and 2.
Going to Camp Blood, ain't you?
Camp Blood, ain't you? It's going to Death Kiss. So I watched the first 2. And man, I hadn't seen the original Friday the 13th in quite a while, because usually whenever I just throw one on, I never reach for the original because I want to see Jason run around killing people.
Yeah,
I like that movie though. That first one is still one of my favorites.
It actually it holds up better than I remembered it being. So I was glad that I actually put it on and watched it for the first time in quite a while. It's a very solid movie, and it's easy to see why it became a very successful franchise. That movie sort of is like it's a solid bedrock for sure. And then of course part 2.
Bob, I asked your opinion about this series recently. Having said that, do you change your opinion on what you told me? You don't have to reveal what I said, but
I don't know what I told you. I don't even know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
Are you revealing your crush on Jason? What are you talking about?
No, I was asking. We were talking about summer movies, and I asked Bob, like, what do you think like the best Friday the 13th?
Oh, for summer
is, yeah,
right.
And he was like,
right.
Yeah, you want to change that opinion?
No, I don't think so. Still, but it's good. It's still very good.
They're all good. Well, not all, but most of them are pretty good shots for that.
Yeah,
Manhattan. That's the one.
That's one. If you watch,
I remember it was a summer you guys were like going through the series, I think, and that's where I watched a lot like Manhattan for the first time, and several of them for the first time.
Man, that is a dog shit movie and entry into the series, in my humble opinion.
Especially since he like spends like 10 minutes in Manhattan and most of it's on a boat.
True.
Yeah.
Part 2 holds up just as well as I recall. It's fantastic. Okay. Jason with a bag head, run around,
baghead Jace,
killing these kids, and it's fantastic.
Man,
the ending.
3 is really
incredible. 3 is all right. I'll probably watch that this week and then I'll talk about it later. But
okay.
Yeah, I really enjoy this franchise, and summertime is perfect time to work through it again. I also watched this movie from 2010. It's called Frozen. It's written and directed by Adam Green. It's about this group of friends that go up to the mountain one weekend to go snowboarding. And they get stuck up on the ski lift, and the people who are like running the ski lift just like shut it down for the night and leave, and they're stuck up there, and they try to figure out how to get down, and wolves come into the picture, and it's a whole thing. It gets pretty gruesome. Never seen it before. It's a pretty fun movie, pretty solid. I found it on Tubi, which Tubi has a shitload of horror movies on it.
You really do.
Like a ton. So yeah, it's pretty good. I give it a light recommend if you want to watch something different. I guess it's more
something not summer oriented at all.
If they had some of those snow jet skis, they could have survived.
Skis, jet.
Absolutely. And then I also rewatched Captain Ron because I just hadn't seen it since I was a kid, and that movie is a blast.
Because you just were reminiscing about your father? Or?
Kind of, yeah. Kurt Russell in anything is fantastic. It also has Martin Short in it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's like a family type movie, I guess, but it's just one that I remember watching on repeat as a kid and really enjoying.
See, like you're not the only person I know that like references that movie like as being a big movie as in your childhood, but I honestly don't even know what that movie's about. I have no idea what that movie is.
Me neither.
Basically, Martin Short is like he's married, he's got 2 kids, and he's like I don't know, he's like a nondescript businessman who's very stressed out, and he's got a family member that passes away. I think it's like his uncle, and he has a boat that Martin Short sort of played on when he was a kid growing up, and his uncle leaves this boat to him in his will. So they hire this guy to pilot the boat from wherever it is back to their home, and they're going to ride along with him and do this like sort of family trip that's going to take like a month long. And they hire this guy, Captain Ron. You know, he's just sort of like a free loving kind of guy, and he's got, you know, one eye missing, and he, you know,
skip to the end,
drinks and has a good time and whatnot. And he sort of shows the family how to do the same. It's fun. It's a fun movie.
It's It sounds like a Real House guest of a movie.
That's yeah, no shit. 1992. That's pretty much what it is. Recommend. That's what I've been watching. That's about it.
Okay, Bob. Thanks.
We got one more segment to get into, the Hotline Scream segment. If you're listening,
oh shit,
and would like to call,
do that. Let's do the new bump. Hotline.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the new bump. If you're listening and want to call and leave a voicemail, hit us up at 904-638-3231. We have one voicemail to play this evening. I believe it's from Michael. We posed a question about people like identifying as vampires or like being like having a vampire kink of sorts last week, and he called in to weigh in on that. Let's hear what Michael has to say.
All right.
Hey, what's up, guys? Michael from Horror Apocalypse. I haven't called you guys in a long time, but I saw this one about vampires, so I thought I'd give you a call in. No, I don't fashion myself to be a vampire, but I'd say probably about 25 years ago, I was dating this girl who had a thing for vampires, and, you know, when you're like 15, 18 years old, you're thinking, all right, she's hot, I need to get some. So I was into vampires too at that point. This girl was freaky though. She used to love if I made a little cut on her, and then I would, you know, lick it clean or drink the blood. So I would say probably for about 6 months or so that we dated, I was an impromptu vampire at that point in time. But other than that, not so much. I'm always curious because I know it is a real disease. It's a mental a disease, I guess, where you have the physical addiction and the mental addiction to it, but you're not really changing into bats and, you know, gas and floating around and things like that. So there is a bit of reality to the disease vampirism. But it's always piqued my interest. I've always wondered what it was like, and always wanted to talk to people who actually thought that they were real vampires outside of the scope of the disease. So I just want to give you guys a call, catch up, see how everybody's doing, make myself heard there, and I can't wait for next week. By the way, I'm so glad I got one of those pick the flicks. You guys are gonna freaking hate me. I love it. But anyway, guys, have a good one. Keep up the great work as always. See ya.
So the blood drinker wants to antagonize us about his pick, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's fine. I don't know, like
Man, that is the opposite of what I have. I am not a blood guy.
I'm just thinking to myself, like, is that true though? Is that vampirism is like a disease there? It's a physical addiction. Like I know people get like compulsively addicted to stuff like eating hair or something.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's like some kind of form of like mental disorder, and
yeah, but
I'm sure
like
that's enhanced.
Addiction,
yeah, I'm sure that's enhanced. Like I wonder outside of like just the general like people get into weird mental kinks like I'm gonna like drink
I mean you can be
it's like
mentally addicted to literally anything, so I'm not surprised by that.
So I don't know how far out to, but I'm no expert. I just know that sounds gross as fuck and I would not be down.
There's an episode
no kink shame.
There's an episode of that dark tourist show on Netflix where he goes to New Orleans and hangs out with people who identify as vampires, and they do exactly what Michael describes here. They make little cuts on each other and like suck the blood out and stuff.
No.
It's very bizarre.
Man, they got to be struggling during COVID.
Like,
Jesus.
He talks to a couple different groups of people, and there's like a group
making
of people.
Me weak.
There's a group of people that like identify as vampires, but it's obviously like they just like to get together and like have an orgy, and they're not really like vamping out or whatever. But there's another group of people that like literally just kind of like drink each other's blood on the low, and there's nothing sexual about it, and they just think that it really gives them some sort of like life force or energy or whatever. And it's a bizarre situation, I think, in any way you cut it, but it is super intriguing to me that people do these things. You know,
not even an orgy's worth that shit. Fuck that.
Not even an orgy, which is the most desirable thing ever.
What if somebody is willing to step on your sperm? Will you do it then?
Oh, well, for free? Oh, now we're talking.
We're talking about we got a free sperm stomp comes with
the sperm stompers.
The complimentary sperm stomp.
Cleats included?
Cleats included here at the sperm stomp.
Free upgrade to the cleats.
I'm going down to the local sperm stomp. Be right back, Ma.
Yeah. There are no
local sperm stomp.
I just had this mental image of one of those ladies in a vat of grapes stomping on the grapes to make wine, but it's sperm.
I imagine it's like you get to pick your girl and then you get to pick the shoes. Like there's a you go into one room, you pick the lady, and then you go.
You're really seeing this as like an interactive video game more than
you got to suit up.
I'm picking Marge Simpson and moon boots.
Well, thanks for calling in, Michael, and sharing your story. And that's pretty bizarre, man. Pretty nuts. But no kink shaming.
It is very bizarre indeed.
Oh no, man. At some point, we gotta start shaming some kids.
No. That is not what we are here to do.
That is in the spirit of anything.
Is that a slippery slope?
That is not what we're here to do. We're not.
Unless somebody's actually sucking the blood of an unwitting participant, then we don't care.
That's right.
I mean, anything. It's like art. Anything can be a kink.
Anything is anything.
Anything can. Anything is a kink.
True that.
.com.
Yeah, go ahead and call in and tell us about your kinks. You know, what are you into? Hit us up at 904-638-3233.
Oh, you're really going to put us to the test on this.
Yeah.
Huh?
Let us know. I'm curious too. Let's put our no shame to the test.
That's right.
Send us your kinks and let's see if we're chill with all of it.
Especially if you're stomping on sperm. We definitely want to know about that.
Here's a flash forward to next week.
Like nothing I'd ever smelled before in my life.
I hope so.
I'd like
Let's
to hear
put
that.
these boys. I'm willing to entertain the idea of shaming some kinks. Let's put these other boys to the test.
Can they entertain the notion of shaming kinks? No. I don't know if that's the message we want to put out to the world.
That is absolutely not going to happen. I won't let you do it. Down with soju. That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
canceled.
Yeah, let's down some soju.
Cancel the soju.
As long as it's chill, bro. Like you gotta like.
It's a super chill kink shame, bro. It's like the most chilled out shaming ever.
It's like whatever, bro. Like
what? I've brought this up before. What if my kink is to kink shame? Are you gonna shame me for kink shaming?
Yeah,
no, because that'll get you off.
We're fucked either way.
Is it possible for God to have a kink so big even he can't move it? I don't know.
These are the important questions.
You want to give me the Aurora Boris of kink shaming? We can do that, but I don't think it's going to do anything for our listenership.
That is plenty of that. 904-638-3231. Let us know what you're into, and we will not shame you. Guarantee it won't happen.
Well, we'll see.
That's going to do it for us this week at Straight Chilling. We're going to be back next week with a brand new show. We're talking about a new release from 2020. We're going to be getting into a movie called The Hunt. Check it out. It's on VOD everywhere, and I don't believe
Bob is forcing this on us.
No, Bob is not forcing this on anybody.
Bob offered us a group of three movies
we can watch.
And we picked another one, and he just would not accept that. He's like, why did you even let us pretend like you were going to let us choose?
Well,
you guys want that one?
To be fair, there was another movie.
We're going to go with the one I think is good.
There was another movie that was an option, and Justin was like, absolutely not gonna watch that one. Won't be having it. So
well, I just said I don't want to watch it. I didn't put my foot down.
Oh, you stepped right in that sperm.
I didn't coerce
in that sperm with no sweat.
I didn't coerce other people to choose a movie they didn't choose.
That's a real Cooter move there.
All right, we're talking about The Hunt. Whatever, Bob chose it. Whatever. Until next week, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at STR8_chilling. On Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. Send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. If you want to join us over on our Slack channel, just let us know on any one of those social media outlets, and I'll send you a link to join in on the daily conversations about the movie of the week, TV shows, music, whatever's happening in the horror news, video games, YouTube, all that fun stuff. So yeah, check out The Hunt from 2020, and until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.